Okay, it's recording. So awesome. Well, thank you, Renajah, for joining me in this interview and celebrating our 15th anniversary with SoCal Can. During this week 3, we really want to highlight student voices, and with Project SOAR, we believe that you are a really good candidate to be able to speak to your experience in high school as a senior going through COVID. So yeah, again, just want to say thank you for joining and doing this interview. So for the first question that I have is, how has your educational journey changed with COVID-19 and with everything that happened in 2020?
My educational journey since COVID and everything else in 2020 has been stagnant. Um, in terms of distance learning, the pressure to actually learn the material is up to me. And I also realized that I have a hard time paying attention and learning when I'm not in a classroom setting. But one of the pros of COVID, I think, is the new distance learning schedule, which I prefer more than the regular school schedule because I have more time on my hands and longer breaks during school hours.
Okay, so it sounds like with COVID-19 and virtual learning, it sounds like there are both pros and cons to distance learning and navigating this new environment with COVID. Yeah, thank you for answering. The second question is, how have you adapted to those changes, and what are some things that you have had to do differently?
In order to help me pay attention, I get up every morning as if it was a regular school day, and I'd eat something or I'd get dressed instead of standing in bed, in my pajamas or laying down. And that helps sometimes, but sometimes I don't. I don't do that all the time, but that helps sometimes. And I also do like a reward system kind of. So every few assignments I turn in on time. I like watch an episode or two of whatever I'm watching on Netflix, so I don't burn myself out from doing work all the time.
Okay, so really getting into having a set routine and schedule, right, that you have for yourself, like you said, acting as if it was, back pre-COVID, where you get up, change, eat something, and then attending class, right? And it sounds like you have a pretty good system going on where you are rewarding yourself, right? Understanding that yes, this can be challenging doing navigating virtual learning, but having that reward system for yourself, I think is really amazing. So the next question is, how can programs like Project SOAR better support students like you in this new world that we're living in?
Um, as a prospective first generation low income college student, I feel like Project SOAR and other programs like Project SOAR can help students like me build a foundation in terms of college. I think it would give students like me an opportunity to learn more about higher education from people who look like them and resemble them.
Yeah, I think you hit a good point right there. On your ending note was representation, right? Actually having people in education who look like you, right? First generation low income professionals, and I think that really attests to you know your sense of, oh, he or she looks like me, then I can do this, right? And I can achieve those goals and those aspirations. So yeah, I think representation does really play a big role, and I'm glad that you touched on that. um, so another question is, you mentioned about programs like Project SOAR providing that college foundation knowledge. When do you think students should be receiving that information?
It's soon ninth grade.
Ninth grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and and I agree. I think in ninth grade, a lot of students may think, oh well, I have 4 years, but really that's when the conversation starts, right? Because we know A through G requirements. That's a big thing that starts in ninth grade, right? So if students are well aware of what those requirements are and how that'll impact them, later down the line, I think it'll be very beneficial for them to know that. So awesome. Thank you for answering. And the last question is, what is one piece of advice you would like to give to the rising senior class of 2022?
I would tell the rising senior class to get into the college application process now and don't procrastinate and wait to the last minute to do it. And I'll also tell them to build their learning and studying skills with all the time on their hands now, because it's going to come in handy not only for senior year but in college also.
So yeah, really, thinking ahead now as a junior going into senior, really starting that process early on, and then developing those academic skills and habits now, so that when they do transition into higher ed, they have those skills ready. Awesome. So with that in mind, you had mentioned. So you had mentioned the rising senior class to start, the college application process early on. You know, how would that look like? What is, what would you say are the top 3 things that they would have to, start doing now as a junior?
Practice writing essays about yourself and your experience and get comfortable with that. Because for me, it was very difficult. They don't teach you to write about yourself in school. So it's going to take some time. That's one of them. The second one I would say is to start getting, like, if you're a very active person, active in your community or at school or anywhere else, just start getting all of that in order now. And the third thing would probably be to make sure that you have all your A through G courses fulfilled, like that you're on the track to having them completed.
Okay. So yeah, you mentioned, starting that, working and practicing those essays, especially since a lot of, those college prompts are really get personal, right? They really want to get to know you aside from the academics, right? And then you mentioned extracurricular activities and, notifying, whether it's a supervisor, a community leader, or someone who can, attest to their abilities and skills as a leader within their community, right? Because we know that, some colleges are going to require letters of recommendation, right? So it's good to, put that in their radar and at the forefront so they're thinking about it. And then you mentioned A through G completion, which I think, is also really big, as a junior now going into senior year, you want to know, where you are within your A through G standing, because that'll determine, eligibility for certain schools, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, Renajah. Well, thank you again so much for, participating in this interview. We're really excited that you, agreed to this and are, doing good work. With working with you, I know that, you have a lot of potential and will, achieve and score high. I'm really excited to see where you are, a year from now, 2 years from now, and then ultimately to graduation.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Renajah.